Sicario is about the machine of selling drugs and the machine of stopping them. Right or wrong, either way.
The Mexican drug cartels became more powerful than local police forces in Mexico.
There is a vast appetite for drugs. I began investigating the cause and the consequence. And that was really the genesis of the screenplay.
You'll be surprised how deeply the tentacles of drug trafficking extend on both sides of the border.
You had murders every day, brutality, the levels you've never seen.
There was something very authentic. The screenwriter knew exactly that world.
My goal was to write a film that had people watching a movie for an hour and a half going, holy shit, what's gonna happen next? And then for the next week, thinking about the themes and the messages. The idea for the screenplay was a culmination of a number of different stories that intrigued me, human stories. What really sparked my interest was in 2006 when the Mexican government did their offensive against the cartels and just the incredible failure of that endeavor.
President Felipe Calderon was really the first president who boldly decided to combat the drug trafficking organizations. And the way he decided to go about that is sending the federal police and the military to border cities like Juarez.
Never had we seen something like what we saw between 2007 and 2012, when it was just all-out warfare. Juarez became a combat zone for all intents and purposes.
There were mutilations, times where severed heads were left in public places as warnings for the rivals. There were literally death threats against police that were posted on banners naming the police officers who would be killed. Many people left Juarez, those who could afford it, the wealthier people. At one point, the mayor of Juarez was living in El Paso.
The misfortune of Juarez is that it happens to be situated at the doorstep of the world's most lucrative drug market. If you're a drug trafficker looking to deliver your goods to your customers in the United States, you got to get through Juarez. And so there are times when one cartel will dispute the territory from another, and thus you have a big explosion of violence. More than 10,000 murders that happened at the height of the drug war in Ciudad Juarez went unresolved. One thing that went unnoticed is these disappearances of young women from downtown Juarez. These were women from the poor parts of the city, and oftentimes they would end up downtown looking for work to help their families. One night, they just wouldn't return home. There wasn't any real investigations. The families, the mothers, were the ones who did their own investigations to try and find out where their daughters went.
They're trying very hard not to let their loved ones become invisible. And that's how Mexico has treated them, you know, they erased them.
Some of these women were later found killed. Their skeletal remains were found in the outskirts of the city. As border security has become tighter on the U.S. side and it's been harder to get their product across, Mexican drug cartels have also gone into side businesses like sex trafficking to try to keep their profit margin high. One of the theories is that these women were being picked up for sex trafficking.
Juarez is a lively city, it's a vibrant city, it's a colorful city. It's a city that has a large industry, it has a city that has artists and musicians. When the violence hit Juarez, it hurt all those things.
We started pushing the authorities to do much better, to do a better job, because, you know, we were hurting with people. They did accomplish quite a bit. People are starting to go back to Juarez. People are starting to go back shopping, seeing the doctor, the dentist, the pharmacist. I feel very confident we're going to change this beautiful, beautiful area of so many beautiful, beautiful people.
It was important to me that we saw the story through the eyes of someone, and this is Benito's character, Alejandro, that had suffered as completely as he possibly could at the hands of this war.
and I thought a fascinating method of commenting on the collapse of law and order in a certain place, complete collapse.
Alejandro started off as a law enforcement guy in Mexico, and, as his family is wiped out by the cartel, becomes hell-bent on a revenge and becoming, and through that process, something that he never would have imagined. Does he have some humanity in there left? Is there something in there that people can connect to, of what he once was?
I worked in Juarez.
For the DEA?
No.
Alejandro's intriguing and he's mysterious and you want to know who he is. This drug problem impacted him on such a personal level that he's gone to the dark side to resolve his struggle. And through him, we learn about the cartels and the drug trade.
Nothing will make sense to your American ears. And you will doubt everything that we do. But in the end, you will understand.
Sicario does a good job of capturing the sense of dread, fear, and of not knowing who can you trust. When you go to Juarez, you right away tense up. It's a survival technique. There are lookouts everywhere because the cartels have placed them there.
Spotter vehicle, left lane.
Spotter vehicle, 9 o'clock.
You also are afraid of the police because a lot of the police have been co-opted by the cartels.
Silvio is, he's a state police officer, his son Alicio, who, like most young boys, idolizes his father, and his father loves his son. But his father's a corrupt police officer. You have to be very careful not to judge him fully because we don't know him fully, and maybe that's the only way to pay for his family. Maybe he was forced into doing it, and therefore his only option is to do it or they'll kill him and his family. You notice that he's drinking alcohol at 8 in the morning. Is that because he's a mean drunk, or is it because he's trying to self-medicate? What are the consequences of his death for his family? Now, that source of income is gone for Alicio and his mother. So how is this soon-to-be adolescent going to survive? What's the best-paying job in northern Mexico for a 13-year-old boy?
One of my missions as a reporter covering Ciudad Juarez was to tell the story of the people who died in this drug war. One was a teenager, the son of a single mother who worked at a factory in Juarez, assembling our cell phones, our laptop computers, making $10 a day. She had to work 2 shifts, so she was not at home very often. And her son could barely afford a decent pair of sneakers. Meanwhile, he's got some neighbors that are driving a great car, have a beautiful home, who are involved in the drug trade. And so he starts stealing drugs with them. Eventually, he's witness to a murder between 2 rival gangs in his neighborhood. And so he is murdered for being a witness.
That's the real evil of drugs. Not only what they do to the body of the person who uses them, but what they do to the body of everyone who touches it.
We as Americans always feel comfortable because Juarez is over there and we're safe over here. And I think this movie is about what happens when that war comes to our town, our city, and how do we deal with it?
It's affecting our neighbor, Mexico, so tremendously, and everyone in it. And our answer is to build a wall.
The border fence was a relatively new phenomenon between El Paso and Juarez that came after the 9/11 terrorist attacks.
There's Border Patrol agents, there's sensors, use of drones and helicopters, infrared device, night vision. Decades ago, I remember you could cross the border and you would literally see people crossing on little boats.
Since 9/11, you now need a passport to cross over. There are really long lines to get from one city to the other, to cross the bridge, as long as 2 hours.
There are thousands of vehicles that cross the border on a daily basis. And among this legal commercial traffic, there's also underground traffic and smuggling of drugs.
It's incredible. They use it in cars, they put a fake transmission, they use it inside tires.
In border cities like El Paso, drug tunnels are one of the smuggling methods that Mexican drug cartels use.
The tunnel that was shown in the movie kind of flashed me back to a tunnel that they found right close to the Bridge of the Americas. There was actually a tunnel that was dug underneath the Rio Grande where they were bringing in drugs, illegals.
They have electricity, they'll have ventilation systems, they'll have ladders. The recent escape of Mexican drug lord Joaquin Chapo Guzman, there was a small motorcycle inside that tunnel.
The drug trafficking organizations are constantly exploring new and different ways to smuggle the drugs across the border.
They were sending drugs on a catapult till they got caught. But it's incredible. They're very smart. When you're talking about so much money, you get smart.
Once those drugs are smuggled across the border, they're stored in what's known as stash houses in El Paso. Could be your neighbor's home. It could be a warehouse. It could be a home where there's nobody around. It could be a home where there are kids around. Then they're repackaged and then they're smuggled further into other cities across the United States.
How do you stop, a $50 billion a year business? The sophistication of criminals has magnified to a point that they're essentially their own armies. The amount of money that can be made from these drugs is so staggering that you understand why they would. So you can't apply law and order as a means of dealing with people who don't respect it in any way. And we've seen that time and again in Afghanistan and Iraq. And at some point, the war becomes a war, and we're seeing an increased militarized approach toward policing. And we've been at war for 12 years, essentially. And as those individuals come back and all the lessons learned in our various wars, they're now being applied to our police tactics. And this is an extreme version of that.
When I read the Taylor Sheridan screenplay, I felt that the screenwriter knew the culture of the FBI, the culture of CIA, the culture of the Delta forces, the military culture. There was something very authentic, very precise in the way he was writing the scenes.
I have a lot of family that is in law enforcement. I have a lot of friends that are in the military, and so I was able to lean on them to make sure that even though this is an imagined world and circumstance, that it's accurate. And lets us really ask the question, does the end justify the means? Which is really the point of the film. It was really interesting to write a character who believes that whatever he does that protects this country is the right thing to do, regardless of what that is. He is the personification of the end justifies the means. Matt believes he's doing the right thing, and that's extremely important.
How far you're willing to let your own ethics stray is a very individual question, whether you're a journalist, whether you're a prosecutor, whether you're a police officer. It's a choice between life and death, doing the right thing and doing the wrong thing. And to choose life is sometimes to choose the wrong thing.
So where do we go from here? I don't know the answer. My job is to ask the questions.